Do not adjust your television. You are currently tuned into Pirate Radio. We are on board the King Kogi airship, flying through a random galaxy, just enjoying ourselves, and this should be broadcasting throughout the entire airship. We had this perfectly good radio room on board and we thought, might as well use it. And we're going to be discussing random little topics. Today's topic is going to be all about pain. But originally I was going to call this the pain podcast, and I thought, no, this is really more of a wellness podcast, because the whole point about talking about chronic pain and being in pain is not to make other people feel bad. It's to discuss amongst ourselves tips, things that have been helping us out. We know how hard it is to get doctors to help us out, so the community has been an amazing source of resources for me, and I hope resources from me to you. And I also thought, wouldn't it be nice if you could send this to members of your family, your friends, your coworkers, and help them understand what you're going through? Because a lot of chronic pain can be invisible, and that's why we call it an invisible illness. We look super great. Oh my God, thank you for saying that. On the outside, but really we are pushing through, and sometimes at our maximum or past. And if someone sent you this and you're like, what does this have to do with me? It's very possible that they're trying to reach out to you so that you can understand a little bit, just a little slice of what someone with chronic pain is going through. And I am not a doctor. I really wanted to be like, hi, everybody, or do a hello, I'm a doctor skit here. But no, I'm not a doctor. I'm just somebody who was born with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and I've been in chronic pain my whole life. And so this community has been an amazing place for me to actually be vindicated that I'm not crazy, because you just basically gaslight yourself into somehow thinking that maybe you're not in as much pain as you thought you are. But then I met the wonderful community of King Kogi, and we all went, yep, we're not insane people. Well, maybe a little insane. But that has nothing to do with chronic illness. But I am not alone on this journey, as many of us are not alone on this journey as well. I am joined by a co-host today, Sir Danathan Bartholomew Starcrusher. That's his official name. Hello, Dan.
Hello.
Thank you for joining me on this little podcast about pain.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure.
You've always been a wonderful support, and, you also are a human being who has to go through an experience of life alongside somebody who has chronic pain. So it's nice to have a perspective of somebody who is not born with a chronic illness. It can be awkward sometimes because I'm the one that's in chronic pain, right? So I'm the one that's in pain, and I've seen things happen before where you, who are not in chronic pain, will get injured, and you'll almost be like, well, it's not like what you're going through. So I think there's also this feeling of someone who is with somebody all the time that they want to minimize the pain that they're in. So I know you're coming from a totally different perspective, and I also have really enjoyed the ways that you've supported me. So I think that it would be nice to share some of the perspectives of things that you're going through, because it can help people understand their partners or their coworkers or their family members and what they're going through,
Yeah, I think it's important for, both sides to really understand how this can affect, partners or friends or family or anyone else who is kind of around someone and wants to support someone with a chronic illness. However, they may be unsure. I was unsure. I wasn't completely sure how that...
Well, why would you even know?
Yeah, you have to go through and experience a lot of this stuff. So I think I can share a little bit of how we've been kind of adjusting and just constantly adjusting, because that's just what you do in life, I guess, isn't it?
And you know what else that's really cool is that we reached out to the community as well. And so I think that we got a lot of screenshots from the community members that kind of left their, there's so many that this cannot be one single podcast, because you can't unpack everyone's life experiences in one podcast. But, you went through them. And what I was really impressed by was that you said, I want to look at some of these top comments. I want to see at some of the things that people are leaving. And then you said to me, it's a different perspective for you to read it, because then you're like, this is a common thread that Martina's talked about as well. Or, so you're a totally different perspective on it.
Yeah, and it's helped me understand sort of different types of, categories or subjects that people are kind of commonly talking about. And there's a lot of similar questions, and I think we can discuss some of the broader ones today, and then we can maybe ask some of the more specific ones later. But it's just been really interesting understanding that this is a broader community that I'm not necessarily a part of directly, but it's something that I share an understanding in. So it would be nice to just talk about stuff, how you've dealt with it, and it's just nice to vocalize these things sometimes, because I think understanding is the main point of this, and just how I've understood what you're going through and continue to understand it is all part of the journey, really, isn't it?
It's about communication, isn't it? And you know what I want to also emphasize is that this isn't about, only talking about things that are negative. I would put under the category of realistic. things that make people feel down. We are going to talk about some honest things, but I also want to give the community, like, arm them with some kind of like something they can take away from this and go, I'm going to try this out, or a partner or a coworker of someone who's they're not in pain. Maybe they can take from this. Oh, that's good to know. There's this really simple this post that I put up on Instagram or somewhere on social media of what I take to a hairdresser. So when I go to the hairdresser, I used to bring with me a really thick cushion for sitting on, and when I was having different types of pain days, I'd wear a core brace that kept my core up, right? And I didn't expect this to really like go anywhere. It was just for the community and stuff. But it's one of my most like commented upon to this day short. And recently a hairdresser commented and she said, I'm not in chronic pain, but because of this video, this helps me understand some of my clients better. Thank you.
Oh, nice.
So you see what I mean? Just because someone's not in pain doesn't mean that they also can't take something away from this video to support people who are in pain.
Yeah, and I think that whole understanding kind of thing, it might just be a little point, but it will make a big difference to whoever, you implement those kind of understandings too. So yeah, I think we've got lots to discuss and we can just go through at our leisure.
Now, just before we continue, I'd like to thank the sponsor of this video, Saley. When traveling to different countries, you can now easily get data pain-free. You see what I did there? Saley has flexible data plans in over 200 destinations. You just download the app, you pick the plan, and then Saley will automatically activate when you land. No more fingertip and nail pain trying to pry open your phone case, put in another SIM card from another country.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So no aliens or anything unusual, just happy with that?
I just don't think that people need constant distractions. Like, sometimes simple is just the best way to do things.
That's true. Just something clear and to the point.
And Saley's made by the brainiacs at NordVPN, so you can actually enable ad blocker and web protections in the eSIM settings.
And who doesn't like web protection?
And you don't want to run out of data because a malicious website is using too many trackers, just draining your data from you, taking everything from you.
And your little dog, too.
So if you're planning on traveling in the future, please scan the QR code, download the app, and use King Kogi at checkout to get 15% off your first purchase. We've been working with Saley for a few years now, and every time someone uses our promo code, it tells them that our ads are working. So we appreciate you supporting us in all the many ways that you do.
Oh, what a simple ad read. Oh, we should just do this every time, Nutty.
Exactly.
Nice and simple.
Well, thank you for listening, and please enjoy Saley when you're traveling overseas. All right, let's get back to Pirate Radio. Do you have a comment or something that you've taken a shot of from the community? Take a shot of. A screenshot is what I'm saying. No one abbreviates that, do they? You're like, take a shot of that. Do you have one that you felt like jumped out that people might be the most interested in?
Well, I think what we can do is I'm going to just bring up my little list here.
Oh, Sir Dinathan Bartholomew Starcrusher and his organizational science pad, you guys.
Yes, my
Star Trek pad.
My use of notes.
Boop, bop, boop, bop, boop.
Yeah, well, I think one topic that's interesting to start with is the topic of doctors and the sort of medical, the medical system's approach to a lot of this stuff, because I think, I guess the term for me is able-bodied versus someone who isn't. I'm not sure. How does that wording work, or what feels comfortable for you?
For when we're talking about like people having to go to the doctors with like a chronic condition versus
people who
everyone
aren't
else?
in chronic pain.
People who aren't in chronic.
What? I think we can kind of like.
You normies? No. No, I mean I would just say someone who's not in chronic pain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
I see. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't specifically say anything different because that's a really interesting topic as well. I like telling people that I am differently able-bodied. That's something that differently, abled is something that I like to talk about. But I know for some people in the community, they don't enjoy that term. They don't like differently abled. So I think in this sense, there's never going to be a term that works. The term has to just work for you. And so for me in this case, just say, like people who are chronically ill or dealing with chronic illness versus people who are going to the doctor for like an average checkup.
Or normies.
Normies from now on out. That long ramble for us to just call them normies.
But I think the first thing really is to talk about that I think would be an interesting way to start off is to talk about how people's experience with doctors and the medical system in various countries as well. It isn't just kind of like specific to our country, because we had such an amazing response through the community post that you did. I think there just seems to be a different understanding of how doctors work for people in chronic pain, because I think for myself, being a normie, when I'm in pain, or if there's something that's kind of like I need to get looked into, the idea is to go to a doctor. They'll give me a solution, and then I'll do that, or whatever medication or exercise, whatever it is, and then it's cured. But obviously, when you're dealing with chronic pain, it's a whole different kettle of fish in that sense, and the attitudes are different. So do you want to just start off a little bit about your experiences and just have at it?
This is going to be like a podcast only about doctors and why they suck. Okay, no. So here's what I'm going to say, and this is going to be like a little bit stressful for some people to hear, but I used to believe that a doctor is someone who's like out there to cure people, kind of like House. So they find out that this person has this condition and it keeps reoccurring, and that doesn't make sense. And so they would want to get to the bottom of it, right? So like me I would say started in grade 8 with my shoulder. I had other injuries, but my dislocated shoulder from sports is what was the bane of my existence. So like grade 8, grade 9, grade 10, grade 12, OAC. I was going in and out of MRIs because it wouldn't heal. I was getting splitting headaches. I felt like my arm was hanging out. The doctors were like, that's not possible. Like, you're not crying. Because one of the big things for doctors is like putting on a show for them. If you're not physically like, if you're not like, they just don't think you're in pain, right? So number one problem is most of us in chronic pain, we don't know we're in chronic pain. So we're just learning how to get through life thinking that that's normal. And then when we're in pain, we go, well, it's not like a 10 out of 10. Like when I broke my arm, I didn't cry because I was like, I've dislocated shoulders and ribs. And so I'm not going to cry at this point, right? So I thought that at my age, like surely by now, a doctor who kept going, we don't really know why this keeps coming out, or like, do we have to do surgery? I thought they were there to solve this for me. And all I had to do was like sit back and relax. And now at the ripe old age of 43, having seen doctors in Canada, having lived in Korea where I saw a specialist who confirmed that I had Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Then I went to Japan where I had to get recommended to a specialist. The specialist, 2 of them, had to assess me in order to prescribe me medication because Japan is very strict on that. 2 different doctors looked at me and said, yup, you definitely have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Then I came to Canada again when Ehlers-Danlos syndrome was on the radio being talked about. People have heard of this now. And I went to the Good Hope Clinic and I went in for an assessment and I was like, this is it. This is it now. I think I was in my late 30s at this point. This doctor is going to assess me and then that's it. The doors are going to open. And so they assessed me and they poked me and they prodded me. They did all the same things. And then they said, yeah, you have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And I was like, I know. And then they didn't do anything to help. They didn't do shit. They gave me a list of physiotherapists. So that year I herniated my back. I herniated my spine and went to the doctor and they didn't know what I was. They didn't know how hEDS. They didn't know how flexible I was. And I messaged Good Hope and was like, hey, can I get this list of physiotherapists that know all about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome? And they were like, oh, we can't actually recommend anybody specifically. And like, we don't actually have a program. But like, this is a list of people who kind of know about this condition. So I was like, okay, fine. So I got a hold of the clinic for that. They didn't know what it was. They didn't know what EDS was. I don't know why they're in this folder of, people that are supposed to know about EDS. But as you can see, that's when ironically, it's called Good Hope. I was like, yes, good to hope. I felt right away, got it. The medical system is not here to help us. It's truly not. The doctors are here to just like solve the quickest, easiest surface things they can do. They don't want to deep dive into it. They don't want to dig. You're kind of like a burden by constantly showing up again with injuries they can't solve.
Right.
That's personally how I feel about the doctoring system now.
It just feels like there's just a severe lack of understanding. Like you have to go to a specialist. However, that specialist isn't there to treat you in it like for physio or anything. It's just to understand that, yep, you have this, which you already knew. And then they say, here's some people who may know about it. And I think in our experience, in Japan, we met some people who were fantastic and really understood. I think it was just hypermobility in general, but like...
That's a physiotherapist.
But yeah, and that's
a whole different fish to fry.
And that's a different thing as well, because physiotherapy can be a very difficult one to deal with. And I know that we've had kind of moments where it feels like, oh, you just need to go to physio and it will be fixed. But it's really not that simple because it has to be with someone who understands it. Like we were really lucky to have Now with us, and she was so good to sort of
believe
walk,
me,
but also walk you through your own body in a sense. Like she helped you understand what was going on there. And then, in the same clinic, we've both had experiences with different, practitioners there who were not great. I think a guy there herniated my neck. Like he, it was a real mixed bag of like physiotherapists with different experiences. But I think the general experience that we've had dealing with physiotherapists was actually more that it almost doesn't register high enough of their concerns. They go, oh yeah, we'll figure it out. Like, it doesn't seem to be a priority for people to know about hypermobility and a lot of stuff that involves, you know, things like, you know, subluxing and all these things that you've had to deal with. And so they kind of, it feels a bit new to them, and that can be a little bit worrying because you had some negative experience with physio as well.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so I would say that, like, to close off the doctor rant and to talk about physio, I'd say that I've gotten to the point where I realized that the only thing a doctor is truly good for when it comes to a chronic illness is opening up prescriptions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you need a prescription to something, you have to, like, convince your doctor that you need it, right? But for me, having tried normal pain medication, having tried opioids, having tried not opioids, having tried suppositories, which is when you put medication up your butt because you cannot consume anymore. I've tried so many types of pain medication, and I found that tapping out the pain physically is actually not the only part that you need to worry about when it comes to chronic pain. It's like only one little tiny part of that. Your pain, yes, your body can cause your pain, but actually your emotions and your psychological state are just as important, if not a little more important, to helping you cope with that pain. So when you're not being believed by your doctor, you feel like you can't be prescribed medication, or maybe, for example, remember in Japan in my last year, the coverage for my physiotherapy
changed.
Yeah, they said that I maxed out. And I was like, what do you mean? And they said that, like, I'm going to the doctor physiotherapy too often. And so the government's like, well, why is she going so often? And then the doctor said to me, well, we told them that you have EDS and that you have consistent injuries. And they have the documents. They have the MRIs to prove it. They have the ultrasounds to prove it on my body. So it's not like I'm making it up. And they said, okay, well, what category does she fall in? And I was like, here we go. So while I had EDS in Japan, I wasn't in this giant fat book of comorbidities, disabilities that you need to have to count for, like, extra physio. So even then I was locked out of physiotherapy and then had to pay full price, right? So it's like you've got doctors prescribing pain medication that then you've got physiotherapists who go, well, you're maxing out this system. So everyone's just passing the buck. Like, they don't know what to do with you. You know, they're just kind of passing you around.
Well, that seems to be a common kind of thread within the comments that I was looking through, and a lot of people just, you know, just so relieved when after, you know, many doctors, they find someone who just believes them.
Just believes them, right.
So I think that's become, you know, because obviously we have gone through and I think we've been fairly fortunate, especially in Japan, because I think it's a very understudied thing over there. And I do believe that there are, I think, quite a few people who have all these different, like, you know, chronic illnesses and like invisible kind of like things to deal with. But I think in Japan people are quite invisible anyway, so you don't really get this strong sense of disability and people kind of pushing through stuff, because everyone's kind of pushing through something very quietly. You just have no idea. But I think a big one, especially outside of Asia, is and I was a bit shocked by this as coming from someone who, I wouldn't say I've visited the doctor a lot, but when I have, they've generally been quite helpful, and
because they can solve you.
Well, that's it, isn't it? And they can solve it, and they can also prescribe something, and then it's like, and job done, on to the next, because obviously there's other patients and stuff. But I think the big thing that, you know, just looking here, is that people are really just kind of like at their wits' end. Like, it's just really got to this point where it's got to a point where you almost don't believe it, or you feel like you're actually you're burdening other people, and you're the problem because no one can find an answer for it. But actually they need to have a little bit more understanding to just support you. And so that seems to be one of the first hurdles, is just convincing a doctor to believe you.
Yeah. So I mean, that is so true. And I read a lot of these comments as well about people not being believed by both their doctors, their families, their friends, their coworkers. And like you said, you begin to actually gaslight yourself. So there was a really, like, a long stage, and I pepper in and out of it, to be honest, to this day, having 3 or 4 doctors literally say to me, yes, you have this condition. I still have days where I go, am I making this up? Like, am I really in this much pain? And I'll be standing there, like, just really assessing how I'm feeling inside my body. And I'll just be like, like, whoa, I'm in so much pain right now. Like, is this why I feel overwhelmed? Is this why I'm exhausted? And then I was like, no, maybe you're not in pain. Like, maybe this is something that you're coming up with and you're like psychosomatic and then you'll have to go like, no, Martina, you had medical professionals confirm this for you. So, so the reason why it feels like it's important to be like confirmed by medical professional is because it's somebody outside of you. And that's why a partner or a coworker or family understanding that what you're saying is real is so confirming, because you sometimes need to lean on them and for them to say, hey, I think you're pushing this a bit too much today. Like, you need to chill, you need to relax. If they don't believe that you have a condition, why would anyone ever tell you or watch out for you? They're not watching out for you if they don't believe you. And so if you are someone who's watching this now who isn't maybe convinced that your friend or your family members, your partner have something as bad as you think that it is, this is me saying that, like, yes, you can be super high functioning. I consider myself very high functioning. I have high functioned through an insane amount of pain and conditions. Like, I've gone through, you know, so many fan meets where I met like my wonderful audience members and I was vomiting on my hands and knees like 20 minutes before I saw them because I just got off a plane and I was in so much pain and the medication and like, but you just wouldn't know because we're so good at hiding it. Like, and this is why I think we're like superheroes. But going back to the whole idea that you were saying at the beginning of not being believed and like not having that kind of support, right? I kind of got to the point where I said to myself, all right, doctors aren't really going to help me. Like, yes, I can be prescribed pain medication, but they're not going to look into it any further. So I can use them as a leverage to go like, I need you to give me an MRI, or I need you to like send me to this doctor. But it's kind of like me making the calls as opposed to the doctor looking out for me. So I got to the point when I realized it is important. I'm not saying it's not important for a doctor to tell you have the condition. I'm not saying that that's not important. But I am saying that if you truly believe what you have and you understand the pain that you're in and you've looked it up and you've talked to the community, the most important step is actually you starting to like self-treat yourself through mental ways, through understanding your limits, to saying no to people, like to putting up boundaries. You actually have to do that all by yourself, which again feels like, great, this is so unfair. Like, already I'm born with this illness and now I have to do this. But I actually think it's more important than getting the doctor to say something, because if you can get your body and kind of bring yourself down to like a certain state of calmness and understanding, then you go to the doctor armed with like all the stuff that you need to tell them about. You know what I mean?
They're more of a utility at this point because, you know, the system requires them to give you a prescription or whatever, and then you can get the medication. But that medication isn't a fix. That's a way for you to then mentally be able to cope with a lot of other stuff that comes with chronic pain, which isn't like slapping on a Band-Aid or just doing some physiotherapy. It's a very different kind. It's actually more mental than I think physical sometimes, and I think that's the part where doctors can come across feeling a bit cold, because it's all physical what they deal with, but actually a large part of what comes across through reading all the stuff from the community is it's a lot of mental understanding of how you specifically have to deal with this, and we've talked about this
on top of already dealing with what you're going through physically, right?
Exactly. And so but the mental side really is the part. If you can, I wouldn't say conquer it, but like you have to just get a really, really good handle on it.
A tight rein was exacthy the visualization I was feeling. I'm like, whoa, brain, whoa! I'm like wrangling in my brain. You know?
And I think it's kind of like, what is it, like a wild horse or something that's just a bit like can go off on its own, tangent, if in a certain condition. And I think that's something that does require understanding for yourself, but also for other people, because I think another side of all this has been, through reading a lot of people talking about this, is that it can be almost as challenging to explain yourself to other people to even start a conversation. Like I think one person even said the pain of dealing with chronic illness is one thing, but actually it's more painful to try and explain it to family members. And I thought that was such an interesting way of talking about it, because you're already in pain, but if it's causing more stress and anxiety and just discomfort to just explain something, then this obviously needs to be talked about a little bit more, because that shouldn't be the case. You should be able to explain this to people without people putting judgment. And for example, like if you say to someone, oh, I have a headache, people aren't there to go, well, do you? do you have a headache?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you kind of go,
you don't look like you have a headache.
Yeah, exactly, because you don't look, you know, your head doesn't like inflate or something, you know.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people who don't deal with pain, say, regularly, just go, what is it, Tylenol, paracetamol, depending on where you're at.
Yeah, the high five meme that I love, where they're
just get some painkillers and then you're done. But I think that's the side of it that clearly the understanding is not there for, and I think the most painful part of it that definitely comes through is that when you have people who want to care for you but don't understand, and I've been part of this as well. It's that, like, understanding is through experience, and I think through experiencing life together, we understand a little bit more about, well, how did that work, or how much pain was, you know, came from that, or how you got through that pretty well, you know, like, and why did that sort of come about. And that's the journey that we're on, and we can hopefully share a little bit of our experience with that, because I think we've had to really take through it. Well, we had to take it upon ourselves as well, because I think the medical system in whatever country you're in is generally a bit strained, and you're not going to get the full attention that you require. So things like looking after yourself, being an advocate for yourself, understanding what it is you're personally going through is actually probably more important than just getting a doctor to say, you got the thing that you thought you had.
Yeah, and you go, can you help me any further now? And they're like, no. So I almost found, like, okay, so it might sound kind of like a backwards way to think about this, but I was confirmed more and more about this with my whole build a ladder perspective. And then I listened recently to a podcast by a doctor and a pain psychologist, right? So for the build a ladder concept, which I've been talking with my community for a long time, which whenever people are like, oh, what's that about? Like, why did you make that up? Again, you have to, like, do you want to explain that you're in so much chronic pain, right?
Right, yeah.
I've gotten used to explaining it to people, but before, like you said, I used to just tell people it was a reoccurring injury. I could not be bothered to explain to people because they'll immediately try to give you their cures. And then that's really frustrating. So if you're somebody who is this is a number one lesson, let's start out here. If you're a member of somebody's, like, family or your partner or your coworker or your friend, and you're trying to support your friend, right, who's going through something chronic, some kind of chronic illness, when you tell them what you're going through, my stomach hurts, or I throw up a lot, or my shoulder aches, people have a habit of wanting to help. They want to cure this for you. They don't want you to be in pain. And then they offer advice like, you should go vegan, or you should give up meat, or you should give up dairy, or have you tried healing crystals? Have you tried essential oils? We have heard it all. Like, there's memes just based online within the chronic illness community where we all snicker together about the amount of cures people have offered us, right? And we've tried a lot of these things already. Like, we've tried as many as we possibly can, and it doesn't necessarily come down to, like, giving something up, because for some people, like, they find out they have celiac disease, which is a real disease, and they go, holy cow, this whole time. And so they give something up and they go, this now keeps me from being this way. But for them, they have to dodge it left, right, and center. People don't get it, because there's people throwing around terms like being gluten-free when they're not actually celiac disease people. So they have their own fish to fry of dealing with people who don't get the severity of it, right? It's the same thing with chronic illness. Like, do you say to somebody your entire life story, which can pour out about how sick you are, because you immediately want to prove it? You know, when I tell someone I have EDS, I'm waiting for them to say, oh, well, my aunt's sister's friend went vegetarian and then their disease, you're just waiting for them to say that. So what you do is you overpour. You go, when I was 6, this is what happened. When I was 8, when I was 9, when I was 10, when I was 12, and then I was in physio. And you just, like, list off this crazy, insane person list of, like, injuries and pain that you've been in. And the person can be, like, totally, like, bowled over by all the stuff you've said. So from the chronic illness position, you either don't say enough, right? Or you say too much, right? So how do we help that person with what they're going through? I think listening and asking questions rather than solving their disease, their illness, their whatever it is. Try not to solve it right away. Try not to solve it. So if you're a partner, a coworker, or a family member, someone tells you what they have, you go, don't say, have you seen a doctor? Because earlier rant, yeah, we've seen a doctor. We've seen doctors around the globe. You say to them, oh my gosh, so, like, how does that affect your life? You know, I've had people say to me, are you in pain right now? You know, and obviously, like, yes, but it's nice that they're asking. They'll say things like, you know, have the doctors been able to help, right? Not saying, do this, try that, do this. That can come later on once you get to know a person a lot better and you understand what they need in their pain kit. You will say things to me like, do you want a heat pack? do you want some ice? That's an actionable thing where I go, oh, I didn't think about that because I was in so much pain that I could have been using a heat pack. So my second brain, my P2 over here will say to me, hey, do you want a heating pack? And I'll go, oh my God, that's such a good point. I think that there's a better way to be, like a nicer way to be helpful to somebody, right? So not trying to get them to prove it. That's out. Like, you don't need to find out how they're sick and why they're sick and if they're actually sick. Forget that part.
Yeah.
Trying to cure it for them is also something you probably shouldn't do. Like, when someone tells you what they have and you suggest things to them like herbal remedies or going to a doctor or trying this or trying that, that also doesn't help, right?
Yeah.
So how can you support somebody who's going through something when they're chronically ill, right?
Yeah.
So I think the first thing would be just to like ask some more questions, like, you know, oh, when did you start noticing this? Like, how old were you when it started happening? You know, what have you found that's helped you, right?
Yeah.
Now that question is not asked enough. Like, what helps is not really asked.
Yeah.
So I think it would be really nice if we talked a little bit about like what can help and tools that I've found that are helpful for me when I need help and I may not even know that I need help. Like, how can I prepare other people?
Yeah, and I think having to just ask for help in general, and this is another thing that came up through, you know, a lot of the answer or a lot of the questions and stories that came through, is asking for help. You can almost feel like guilty or a little bit of like shame towards like having to ask for help, which I think, you know, that really feels, I feel really sad for the idea that you can't ask for help, because, you know, we're a society now where we should be trying to help each other, and it seems like it's almost like the opposite. Like, people are getting quite a lot of adverse reactions to people, you know, saying they're like lazy or they're not trying hard enough and all this kind of like negative speak. And I think that's another side of it that's you know, that's more of a them problem than your problem.
That's a good way to put it.
You know, you're dealing with someone else's kind of frustration, and because of who you are, that's frustrating them. And I think that's another side of the understanding part, is that it's not just necessarily you understand them understanding you. It's that you have to understand that some people might not actually have the capacity to help because they're too lost in themselves, or they're not able to kind of like really see beyond what their narrow scope of understanding is. So I think a large part of this is really it always comes back to understanding, but it's also understanding who is able to help.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it as well, because there are so many, you know, situations where people talk about getting out of a handicap spot. Like, they've parked in a handicap spot, they have a handicap sign, but they don't look disabled. And then there's been so many instances of people yelling at them or telling them that they don't look disabled and stuff. So I think that goes back to that narrow perspective. Like, you can't convince them, they're convinced that you're trying to do some devious deed when really, you know, you actually need the space, but they can't really grasp the idea that someone who looks young or seems healthy could require these things. Like, it must be something you're doing wrong. Like, it's immediately like, well, I don't feel that way, so it's never happened to me before. So how could this possibly happen to anybody else? So I'm quite good at blocking those people out. It's not like, I mean, lots of people go through this and they're not good at blocking it out, because, again, why should we? Why should we have to deal with blocking people out, convincing people we're sick, arguing with our doctors to be like, we're not making the pay? Like, why should we have to do these things? So, but I find that you already have a limited amount of energy as somebody with a chronic illness. So I have to choose how much energy I put into something. And so this might sound extremely controversial, but I'm going to have to bleep it out. But I only have so many fucks I can give about my life. So I have to say, I'm in like a lot of pain for people in different parts of the world and things that they're going through. I'm really sad that I see things that are happening in Toronto that I want to help with. Oh, I wish I could do more of that. But if I spend my energy advocating for other people's things right now, I won't have any energy left just to take care of myself. So for me, I have to say to myself, okay, these ignorant people are yelling at people in these parking spots, or these people don't believe me, or these doctors won't. And I have to go, you know what? I don't have the capacity to deal with it. I am just trying to get through life myself. So I find that by blocking out some of those things and saying that you're not going to focus on them, you're going to focus more on what helps you, is a pretty good step to start with. It's an actionable step. And this is something I wanted to share with everybody regarding like things that you can do and things that your friends and family can do. It's the emergency toolkit that I've been talking about. You know, I use that phrase sometimes,
well, we have lots of little things around the house that help out on different days, and we have things like heat packs, cool packs, just ready, and just keeping things visible and in sight, so it's just easy to just grab it. And I think part of that is also that when you're in a lot of pain, you're not you're not in your best mind in the sense of going like, well, I need this, and
Exactly.
I need, you know, you just need to go like, I just need some relief. And so having these pre-prepared, you know, packs or just having stuff where you know where it is and you get it, and you can just, you don't have to think, where is it, or, you know, what do I need to do with this or whatever. You can just grab it, use it, and that's it. That's all you need, really.
Yeah, and I think that it's also something you can then tell other people about, right? Like, you know where the heating packs are, you know where the ice packs are. Like, it's not just something that's just on me, because I don't seem to think about it when I'm in pain. It's like my ankle will be killing me, my shoulder hurts so much, and for some reason, I no longer can think to myself, maybe I should just get an ice pack. It's like, why wouldn't I just get an ice pack, Martina? But I'm so busy focusing on just trying to, like, function and not be in pain that you kind of get foggy. We call it brain fog a lot. Our brain just like farts out. We don't know what to do. So if you're somebody who is supporting somebody, whether you're a friend, a family, a coworker, a partner, you know, you can help out by understanding that your partner, your friend, or whoever they are may not understand what they need when they're ill. Thus, it's on us, the chronically ill person. We must prepare our pain pack, you guys. So the pain pack will look, your emergency kit will look different to every person, right? But on a day where you're feeling a little bit better, like on your best day that you have, that's when you start to put together this kit. And it can be a physical box, a basket, and you can just put the stuff that you need in it on those good days. I like to make a list. You know, I like to make lists of things that I need so that it's not in my head anymore, right? So before I travel, I have a massive list of things, like as if I haven't traveled, as if I don't know that I need my contact lens solution or my medicine or my stomach medication. But there's so many little details of things you need when you're chronically ill and you leave your comfort of your home that you get overwhelmed by the idea of even traveling, right? So on a good day, on any good day you have, you book it in as you time. Like, as in, like, I was going to hang out with friends, but I feel really, like, energetic today, so I'm actually going to put in time to build myself my emergency kit. And you put in the things you need. And then you share that with your friends and family or people who are around you so that they can then go, oh, maybe right now she or he can't advocate for themselves in this moment. So I'm going to offer them things I already know they like. Do you want some nuts? Like, you know, we have that little snack drawer filled with like cashews and a bunch of easy grab figs and stuff. We have that because it's hard to think about even feeding yourself when you're having a bad day. So having a little drawer where you go, every time I grocery shop, every time I order groceries, whatever I do, I'm going to include my comfort foods like toasted seaweed, cashews, dark chocolate, whatever it is for you, and you put it in that drawer. And then when you go, I don't know what to eat, like I haven't taken my medicine, I don't know what to eat, you know you have a drawer of stuff. So this is what I mean by like little emergency kits. And they can be all different kinds. They can even be fun kits with like art supplies and things that make you happy, or pieces of paper where you say, don't forget about Animal Crossing, crossword puzzles, knitting. You can write out your favorite things to do, and on days when your brain doesn't think, you go, good job, past self. I've already prepared this emergency kit. Yeah,
but I think as well, it's also, for me, it's good to have a list of things to just kind of throw at you just to see, you know, what can work, hot or cold, you know, would either of these work? And you can sometimes be like, I don't know. And I go, well, maybe it's cold pack today, you know, or you just use your best judgment. Or if you're looking a bit zoned out because mentally it's just been a lot going on, you know, park yourself in front of Animal Crossing for a bit. It just takes that weight off having to think, and then puts you into a bit more of a kind of recovery state. You know, I've learned a few ways that I know, and like you said, sometimes you can't really make those decisions yourself because you're just a bit like maxed out. So I think it's important to have those kind of like, for you as the friend or the partner or anyone who is around, even if you're with other people, to be able to say, oh, do you want to chill out? Do you want to like sit, you know, on your own for a bit, just to kind of like bring yourself back into like understanding, all right, I'm a bit overwhelmed, just need a bit of, you know, time out, and that's it. And then normally what happens after that, from my perspective, is that give it an hour or two, you have a snooze, and then you kind of have a bit of a reset. Whereas I don't think you would have probably given yourself that time to sort of like really relax if, you know, you weren't given the opportunity to, you know, give yourself a bit of recovery time. So I think that's an important part, and also not to expect that once that, you know, once the recovery time has started, not to expect to go out after that. You know, it's really just to go, you know, batteries are, you know, you're not gonna just take your phone out with like 5% battery left and be like, well, it should be fine for the evening, like
That's a good way to put it.
It really that's the point in the day where you go, and I think from a partner's perspective as well, you go, just make you comfortable. If you're still awake, something to watch, something to do. And I see it as like indulgent comfort time. Like you were watching that, what is it, Pursuit of Jade? And I think a lot of the times when you needed a bit of downtime, it was kind of like, right, just get yourself comfy, watch a show. As much as I really wanted to watch the show, it was your show, so I let you have it.
He was dying to watch Pursuit of Jade. You still got the recaps. It didn't really matter.
Exactly. But I think it was a good way for you to kind of just like power down. And I think and then, from my side, I was just like, I can get on with a couple of things for myself, or I can look into this for me, or I just read my own book, or whatever it was. It's just understanding as well not to expect anything beyond just a bit of chill time, and that's I think been one of the best ways for us to then have the next day to not be a full recovery day.
Do you mean that I'm learning how to not push it to the limit? Because this is a common, push it to the limit joke is a big normal one amongst the chronically ill community, because as soon as you start feeling good, you're like, all the things that I couldn't do before, I will now do it. And then you push it to the limit.
Well, even yesterday when we went for a walk, you were saying, I feel good, but it would be good to kind of wrap this up. And then by the time we got back, you were kind of like, well, actually, it was a bit much. But it's hard to gauge, sometimes when we're out, it's actually hours or even a day later that it kind of affects you. So I think it's difficult to manage, even for yourself, rather than having to relay that back to someone.
It's always a surprise, and I think that's also another one of the challenges is accepting that there is no pattern, in the sense that, like, it's not like it's raining out and now my knees hurt, and now it's not raining so my knees don't hurt. Like, it's not like it's kind of an obvious thing that can happen. It can be too hot. Your system can be overwhelmed because you're just too hot, and you might be in a place that doesn't have enough circulation, and then that causes you to flare up, and now you've got hives, and now you're itchy, and now your body panics, now you feel upset, so now your brain is upset, which then amps up the pain level, right? So I think that the most important thing is, you as a chronically ill person, even if you do not know exactly what you have, the doctors are not helping you out, like, no one here elsewhere is helping you. Now you got to say to yourself, okay, well, what helps me? How much resting helps me, and how much resting hinders me? Am I resting too much because I'm feeling depressed, and now I'm hiding inside because my body is convincing me that I'm in pain, and I'm amplifying that by telling it that it's right, and then staying further away from the outside world, thus mentally creating another version of pain. We need to be careful with that kind of thing. So this is actually like a nice little transition. When the final thing that I really want to talk about was the whole build a ladder mindset, and why I think that the pain in our head, which is really, it's true, your pain goes through your brain, and the pain that's physically affecting our bodies are not actual equal forces. They're doing different things to our bodies, and while we can't help the pain side of our body, we can kind of help our brain pain, and then that turns down the volume of pain, and then that turns down the volume of pain in your body.
I think that's the part of where recovery time is actually, I would say, less about the physical recovery and sometimes more about the mental recovery. Of a lot of overloaded, you're dealing with pain, plus having to cope with it, plus having to think through your day, plus having to think about what you're going to do tomorrow, whatever it is. There's a lot of thinking involved, and a lot of mental kind of sides of just juggling like 5 or 6 different things, and then having to deal with the pain. So it's from seeing how you've adapted and how you've kind of we're just I don't want to say that you don't push it to the limit, because I think you
definitely do,
but you don't push it to the limit where it's a detrimental thing for you for like a couple of days. And I think when we first were really kind of like living with each other and really understanding each other, you would say to me like, 2 or 3 of these days I'll be out.
Unknown days of the week I might be out.
And so you take note on that, and you just go, okay. But we didn't really ever like push it so hard that you were out for so long. You were ill and a couple of injuries here and there, but nothing out of the ordinary in the sense of the recovery time.
But you know what I have to say though? I had a noticeable difference when I started to see you say things to me. Like, you'd look at me, like we'd be on a bike ride somewhere, we'd be doing something, and I'd be like, yeah, let's go to the next place. And you'd be like, are you sure? Because it's like pretty hot today and we've been out a lot. And I'm going like, yes, I'm so happy, I feel good, let's do it. But then you would kind of look at me sometimes and go, I don't want you to push it to the limit. So actually it was you starting to understand the signs that I couldn't see in myself. Like I couldn't see the push it to the limit signs because we're too excited. Like we're so excited to finally have energy, right? And I found that it was actually quite helpful for you to say things like that, where I was not being the one who had to cancel the party. Like that's a lot of the guilt and the frustration of being like, I don't think I can go out tonight, or I'm sorry I can't make this movie, or I know I said I'd go out but I can't. Like a lot of us deal with constant guilt on canceling on our friends and canceling on coworkers and stuff. But I think what would be amazing, and again, we're not asking you guys to change or anything. We're not like, do this for us. But I think what would be nice is, number one, if you believe that somebody has a chronic illness, whatever that might be. Number two, you know what things they need. For example, like rest, a blanket, an ice pack, a dark room, no noise around, maybe too much, there's too many sounds coming in, and so you're getting overwhelmed. Like once you understand things that they might need, headphones and anything, then when you suggest something like that and you say, you know what, it's been a pretty busy day, like I'm feeling a little cooked, like I'm pretty hot, like why don't we just head back and get some ice cream and chill, then I don't feel that guilt of me having to say, I don't think I can go, I can't make it. So obviously you don't have to do that, but I do think it's nice sometimes when other people in your life, whether your friends, family, or partners, can get that you might be at a limit even if you can't see it. Like they can kind of understand you. So I think the goal is to understand all those aspects of the person, like what upsets them, the limits to what they can do, and maybe suggesting some chill time, and sometimes we'll say no. There's been times when I've said no, I'm good, and then I definitely pushed it to the limit and then was tired. But then sometimes you just want to see your limits because you enjoyed that day so much that the memory of it is enough to kind of keep you through it. Because again, mental positivity is a big aspect of fighting off the pain in your brain.
And I think, really, there's multiple routes to having a good time. It's not just one path, and if you don't do that, then no one's having a good time. It's just managing around, will this just make for a really difficult day the next day? And it's kind of managing that. And to be fair, I think a lot of people who don't have any chronic illness or anything like that, you will feel it the next day, especially with age. You 2 days afterwards, you start to feel the gym, as opposed to it feeling almost like instant the next day, and then you healed and you're on to the next thing. I definitely find my personal recovery time is longer. So I kind of like to sort of give myself an easier evening after doing lots of exercise, knowing that I'm not going to do as much the next day, not pushing it through all the time. So even if you do push it to the limit, you get back, you can have you can just focus on maximum chill. And I think that's always been a nice way of turning it round from it being we pushed it a little bit, but then we can push for lots of relaxing recovery. And I think that's part of it. And the recovery part is nice. It's kind of we can put our feet, we can watch a show, we can play a video game, we can read a book, we can just lie in bed for a bit. It gives you an excuse to just kind of power down for a bit. And I think that should never be seen as a negative thing, or oh, we didn't do as much today, and for me, I can go out and do other things. I don't want to put you in a position where you have to push it just to keep up with me. That doesn't bring me any joy, and it doesn't bring me any joy to go oh, I have to push you along the whole day. We have the ways that we go on our adventures, and I enjoy them, and I don't feel limited by that. But I'm also equally not going to say we're going to cycle for 7 hours. That's a ridiculous idea.
My bum.
Yeah, well,
everyone's bums.
It's just one of those things. But for some people, that kind of push yourself to the limit kind of adventure thing is how you get your kicks. So to wrap up about pushing your limits and how we've kind of found a nice way to kind of do both, stay adventurous, but also not make it so difficult for you the next day that can't do anything. I think that just takes a little bit of management, and it just takes and management is such a dull word, but it's just the way I look at it is just to think of, well, how do we make tomorrow a nice day as well as today. You know, I get it, you can live in the moment and you've got to be present, blah, blah, blah. However, I think when we deal with this together, there is a little bit of foresight into the future that will help when you're dealing with things like pushing it to the limit. Because I equally would say that it wouldn't make much of a life if you didn't push at some points, and I mean this in general. Like, you know, if you are very safe and comfortable all the time, you don't know what your limits are. And I think one thing that we've discovered is that your limits actually change based on how healthy you are, in the sense of going, not just like physically but mentally as well. Like, you've been able to cope a lot better in more recent times because you're just feeling a lot better, I think, in terms of where you're at. And so that's made the limits change in a way where we go, oh, well, actually this was quite tough, you know, a year ago, but actually now it's you know, the limits are a little different, so we can, I don't want to say push it, but we can kind of go like gently nudge the limits and go like, well, you know, we can do this, I think. So
well, for example, I mean, that's a really good point. Like, we traveled to PEI, or maybe it was Halifax first, and I'm trying to remember, they're both economy flights where it shouldn't have been that long. I think it was like 2 hours and a bit.
Yep.
And I think the first flight I didn't use a bum cushion because I was like, oh, like, I think it should be okay because it's not that long.
Yeah.
And that was a incredible mistake. It was an incredible mistake. I was in so much pain, and I did pack my little foldy cane and stuff like that, and I was just like, wow, that was a big mess up, Martina, because of that. I knew was now going to pay forward to the rest of the trip, because I'll have like taken out a couple days where I could sit at a restaurant or sit on a bus or a train. Like, I've really like screwed that up. So what I realized was, okay, that was pushing it a little bit too far to the limits. Like, I don't need these things. Then I realized we went to PEI. I bought that bum cushion. I had my cane with me, which I still needed when I got off the plane. The economy flight was not that like long as well, but I was able to handle it a little better by preparing in advance, by having like a softer cushion and having my cane with me. So I do think it's like you said, you push it to the limit and you go, okay, wow, that was a bit too much. Like, I stayed out too long, or I ate too much of this food. Like, fatty foods can make me throw up. Like, I don't know why. That just seems to be the way it is.
And it's not all the time. This is the other part as well, is it can be a little inconsistent. So, and that's just based on how you're generally feeling, you know. And I think that's been it can be a bit tricky, but I think there's definitely parameters that we can work within. And I think, for example, like, I don't think it's worth pushing to not have certain comforts when we have things like a bum cushion or certain things like your cane. And just I think it's more of a relief when you get off the plane or you get off a long journey and you don't need your cane, and you kind of go like, sweet, but we have it, you know. So I think these are the things where, if you prepare, I don't want to say you prepare for the worst, but you prepare to use something and then you don't use it, feels also like a win. Whereas if you don't have it and then it hurts because you don't have the thing, then it feels like a kind of double lose, because you went, oh, I had the thing and it hurts.
And it's sitting at home and you like shake your fist in the air. And okay, so, and I think this is a really good point as well, because you know how we were talking about emergency kits, like the idea of having a kit, you know. Some people in the comments were talking about how they're having a hard time getting out and being motivated to go out and to travel and to see people, and they feel too scared to do that because of the pain, right?
Yeah.
But that's where you prepare your kit. And then this is something to think in mind as a friend or as a partner or as a family member. If you're traveling with somebody who has a chronic illness, you guys will swing your arms and go, what should I pack? Shorts and dresses and t-shirts, what should I pack for vacation? But you know what I think of when I go on a trip? I immediately think of what's going to happen if I have a flare. I'm not even thinking about the fun stuff. I'm like pre-worrying. I go, I got to pack my medication. I have to pack enough. Do I need to ask if this medication can enter the country? Is it like legal for this medication to travel over these borders? What if I don't have this with me? What if I don't have that with me? So we actually kind of go on this like pre-tear of being concerned about the worst case scenario, right?
Yeah.
And it is important for us to think about that, because there are time periods where you might be in a serious situation and you do need the help of the items you have. However, by accepting and understanding that there are things you might need, writing it down, not just leaving it in your brain, your beautiful brain, which is working so hard, you write it down and you go, this is the Martina travel plan. And you write out, if it's a short-term travel plan, what do I need for like a day trip? Like, oh, I'm gonna hang out with my girlfriends. We're gonna stay at a hotel one night overnight. What do I need on that one night overnight? So you can write out these little tiny scenarios so that when you have to travel, you don't have to be so panicked about trying to remember everything because you've already done the work for it. And you can show your friends and family and partners. You can say, hey, I need help packing because I'm thinking about all this stuff. And your partner will go, oh, wow, I didn't know you had to think about all this. Communication, sharing it. And then they can go, hey, why don't I pack your heating pad, ice pack? And they can do these things that you're always thinking about. They can alleviate that weight from your shoulders. So that's another way I think that people can support you, is by seeing the list that you've made. And if you don't have anybody that can support you, that's fine. I've also been in that situation where it's just me, myself, and I. Those lists help you and your brain because you've already written down the stuff that you need, and it makes life a lot easier. So if there's anything you get out of this podcast today, either as somebody who's in chronic pain or somebody who's watching someone who's in it, I think it's really important to know what helps you and to write it down or prepare a kit for yourself.
Yeah, but I would actually say in general, it's actually, I found it quite alleviating to write things down and not have to think about certain things every single time, especially if it's repetitive. So things like, what do I need when we're traveling and stuff like that. And we've got quite good at having like little packs where we just grab it and just throw it in the bag. And then that kind of alleviates also the stress of having to constantly rethink the same thing over and over again. And I think a lot of the time when we're packing, we're not thinking too hard beyond what most people would pack, because now we've kind of got it into a pretty succinct range of kits. We might be a little bit out of, I don't know, like contact lens cleaning solution
it's always contact lens solution, but I'll have my medicine.
But that's completely nothing to do
it's
with
the last
pain.
one,
But and I think it does the alleviation of that. Just skims those layers of kind of mental kind of like, it is a little draining to constantly have to think of these things. So these little solutions do add up over time of having, not having to constantly think of the same thing.
And I think that those kits can even go for something as simple as leaving the house. So when we leave the house, I have a Tom Nook Animal Crossing bag, that one that you got me that I love, and in it I have all these little tiny items. And for me, this may not even be an EDS thing, just this might be a Martina thing. I know that I'm a what is it called, a neurodivergent human. I'm definitely a neurodivergent human. So there's different things that I need. And if I leave the house like raw dogging it with a cell phone and a wallet, I'll feel so naked because I want my contact lens drops because my eyes might get dry, and I can really feel when they're dry because I'm heightened to my body. Oh, but what if I need an Oshibari, my cloth, because they don't have a dryer at the cafe and then my hands are damp. Like, so my brain will like run through all these scenarios. And so before I leave the house, I have everything I might possibly need in this little tiny bag. Then I have a second bag, which is the bag I'm taking. And within that bag, I have another bag. So I have like a small bag, and I'll go, what do I need for this trip today? I'll go, it's hot out. So I'll go fan, sunscreen, eye drops because these contact lenses are 2 days old and I know they're going to hurt. And then I go, hand sanitizer. I'm going to bring a mask. I'm going to bring this because it might rain. And I have everything ready for myself, like a little tiny station where I can just pick out what I need. Because I used to take the whole thing with me and it was so heavy. Do you remember you'd be like, why is your bag so heavy? It's because like a scared little turtle, like I brought everything with me that I might need. And now I've separated it and said, everything you might need is in front of you, but you can pick what you need, like a convenience store candy. You can just be like, I'll only need these today, you know? And then I feel like it's easier to go out. But if I don't have that station, you're kind of like running around being like, do I have sunscreen? Do I have this? Do I have that? So that little station makes my life and my brain a lot lighter. All of this to me relates back to the whole build a ladder concept. And the build a ladder concept, again, something that I just came up with for myself about trying to get out of something dark. I'm going to need a ladder. So then I said, well, how do I get out of this pit? I've got to build my way out using a ladder. And so what do I do to form the rungs of this ladder? How do I get out? Well, I found that by focusing less on about my pain, my situation, my frustration, my difficulties with the doctor, how no one believes me, like all these kind of things. Rather than thinking about that, I said to myself, okay, what is anything good that I can do? What is something good that I've done, right? Getting out of bed in the morning and going to the washroom to then take a shower, I say to myself, wow, good freaking job, Martina. Like you got out of bed today, even though you knew you were going to be in pain. You got out of bed. You faced the shower. The shower for most people is nothing with thought. They just take a shower, right? I have days where I wash my hair and days where I can't wash my hair because now we understand that this movement for me with my crappy ass shoulders is really hard to do. And so I have to basically say to myself, if I take a shower today, then maybe I can't put on my makeup, or if I take a shower, maybe I can't do the dishes. Like, you're kind of balancing everything out, right? But we should see that as a positive. We should say to ourselves, good job, you were able to take a shower. Heck yes, you put on a new t-shirt. And then it should extend further than that to things like, you know, look at this beautiful sunset in front of me. Like, look at these beautiful colors in the sky. And all these little things are different rungs on your ladder that will pull you out of this dark pit. And there are times where the ladder might break. You have a pain flare up. I mean, I'm dealing with an injury now. I'm super frustrated. I can barely walk. I'm like, ugh. But if I hadn't already built up that ladder of, you know, positive thoughts and positive reinforcement about myself and my life, I would be falling straight back into that pit of depression again, right? I'll like fall a couple rungs down, but then I'm just kind of like, no, I can do this. I'll go outside in the rain and see the snails. Just seeing a little snail with his cute little snaily guys come out, I'll be like, wow. And so I found that by focusing on the positive things around me, I don't mean positive as in like going on vacation or anything huge, by looking around and finding like wonder in the world, like square air conditioners and, you know, birds on a wire and stuff like that. It actually helps me then fight my pain. And it turns out that I'm not a crazy person. Did you know that? It's real. I listened to like a pain psychologist, and she said that they're doing all these different treatments and CAT scans on people, and they're finding that physical body pain is only one aspect of being in pain, but your brain actually processes things and treats it as pain as well. Being stressed, being anxious, being in a bad situation, feeling helpless, being in an abusive situation, all these things can actually go into your brain and register as pain, which is why heartbreak's apparently painful. I didn't know this was real, but like losing a pet or a loved one, it can hurt you like you're in physical pain.
Right.
So if you apply this to the world of someone who's in chronic pain, you're battling like two things. You're battling first your body, which is in pain, and it's telling your brain you're in pain. And then you have to battle yourself, because your brain is telling you to be upset, to feel sad, to feel low, understandably, like you're in pain. So your job for you yourself, you need to learn how to like give your brain as much positivity as it can, because then that lessens your physical pain. And this is like a scientific linking they're discovering, that treating physical pain is not enough. You have to also treat mental pain, which is like pretty mind-blowing. It's pretty mind-blowing. So I'm not saying that your pain is in your head and you've made it up, right? Because it literally is in our brains, you guys. Our brains are telling us this. But what I'm saying is, you may not be able to battle the physical front. You may not be able to get a prescription from the doctor. You may not be able to do like certain things, but you can control, or at least battle, your inner demons and inner thoughts. And by replacing them with going to look out the window, seeing someone go by, watching what they're doing. Oh, that must be a difficult job. Like, look at them delivering all that stuff. Oh, look at that dog go by. Isn't he cute? Just these little tiny acknowledgments of tiny positivity and hope in the world can help battle that negative pain brain. And I didn't know that was actually like cognitive behavioral therapy, and that it was something scientific, but it's real. And so I hope that the build a ladder thing can help more and more people, however you want to phrase it. It doesn't have to build a ladder, but that it does truly make an impact on you. And that's why I'm able to do things like, let's go traveling. Even though I know I'm going to be in pain, I'm prepared mentally. I've got my little lists, I've got my little kits ready. I know how to like look at different things so that I'm not anxious on the plane. I've kind of trained my brain into like being a well-behaved animal, as opposed to like going off on a tangent because it's in pain. It's being zapped all the time. I'm like, no.
But you can get enough positives from a trip to outweigh the physical like pain to at least kind of battle that, because if you're having to deal with the mental negativity, you just got to flood it with positivity. And so I think that's been something that's part of how we travel now, is that there has to be, you know, those positive, you know, the wins basically of going anywhere. But you don't need to travel for that, but it helps to have something that when you go traveling, you go, oh, this can be a win, rather than it being a stress, or rather than it being like an expectation that wasn't met. So and the good thing about traveling that you're bringing up too is that, like, if I say to myself, and this is what like a normal person does, right? I can't wait to go to Italy because we're going to then go to that restaurant that we've booked, right? Your expectations are,
airport, plane, you'll probably sleep the flight, you land, you go there, and you go to the restaurant, right? But someone who's in chronic pain is going to worry about every single aspect along the way before they even get to the restaurant. And then by the time you're in Italy and you're in so much pain and everything's upset that you don't even want to eat food anymore because you're nauseous, you threw up, whatever. So it's kind of like a bigger battle for someone with chronic pain. You're battling two fronts here. You're battling your physical pain, and then you're battling your mental pain. And so by doing whatever you can to remain more curious and excited, the less your anxieties will take over. So like even on an airplane, like all the different things that I bring with me, like watercolor kits, and I draw, and I have a book, and I'm gonna watch a movie, and I have the video about all the stuff that I'm bringing just to stay you know, comfortable. I'm doing all that so that when I get off the plane, it can minimize the pain and the anxiety that I'll have while going somewhere. Thus I'll have more energy to go to the next place. And then when I go to the next place, it's not just the next place. It's like, oh wow, like the cars are different colors here, or like look at the roadway, or you're really trying to acknowledge and take everything in to prevent your brain from bigging up all the pain that you're in and making it even worse. Does that make sense?
And also removing a layer of anxiety from what the expectation is. If we don't do this, then we can't have a good time.
Yes, I'm going to be in trouble. People are going to be disappointed with me. My friend, family, partner is going to be upset with me because I couldn't do these things. Like those thoughts then.
I think there's a lot of people pleasing, especially that I could read within the community of just trying to like kind of grin and bear it for the sake of like the group. But the group doesn't seem to care that you're grinning and bearing it, and I think that's part of, do you just take on the physical pain, which then adds on to the mental pain later, or do you just outright cancel and just go, I can't do this kind of thing?
Or set yourself a limit where you go, well, they're not caring about me, so I'm going to care about me first.
Well,
and
I'm going to go to very important.
Yes, exactly. And that took me a very long time to figure out. But you don't have to be mean or rude about it. But like, if they don't want to hear it, if they don't understand it, if they don't listen to you, if you explained it and they don't care, then why should you care about them being upset about you not coming to something or showing up? So that's when you have to then self-talk good to yourself. I wouldn't do this to somebody else. I wouldn't do this to one of my family members. Like, I wouldn't do this to somebody. So how would you take care of that person? You'd say, I'll come to half of it, but I've got to leave it too. And you got to this and that. Nope. I have to leave it too. And that might be for your own mental well-being, which then keeps you from being in more pain.
Exactly. And that's the expectation thing as well. Like, you shouldn't have to quietly suffer just because you're trying to keep things cool with it, people around you and stuff. And I think it's hard, especially when family can be quite like, put a lot of expectations on you and stuff. But like we were saying before, it's just looking after yourself is the main thing, and then you can look after, people around you and care for them. But looking after yourself is really the main thing. So
and I want to say, can I say it to the main camera?
You can.
I just want to say, like, to the community, I think you guys are doing, guys, GUISE, as in guys, gals, theys, and thems. I think you guys are doing an amazing job. I think you are doing a wonderful job just to make it as far as you have. You're still on the planet. Good for you. All the suffering you've gone through, you've still managed to be who you are. I see such amazing artwork, design, thoughts, comments from everybody in the community, and you're still doing that, maintaining yourself despite. And I think you're doing awesome. And I just want to say you're being seen by me, and you're being seen by the other people in the community, and you're being seen by people like Sir Danathan, the explorer of the space jungle. Your name's just going to change every single time. But yeah, the important thing is that you're doing great, and I know that we're in pain, and it's not something that's going to leave us, but I hope that you can get something from, this podcast. I think we have many more comments and questions that we can definitely do, and we're going to do another one of these for sure, because, why should we have to hide? Like, why should we have to not tell people what we're going through? So I think that this is a nice way for us to share this with people, and I hope that this is helpful so that you guys can share it with your friends and family and partners. I hope you get something from this. Please let me know in the comment section, and if there's anything you're going to take away from this, get yourself that little emergency kit ready, all the things that you need for you. Let's get more communication going on with our family and friends and partners. If you're one of the people who is on the outside, do not try to solve the person's problems. Try to listen, ask questions, and figure out what you can do to help. And I hope you guys can get out there and build a ladder, pet a dog, get a cute sweater that makes you look like a bear, buy an umbrella that when you open it up, it has giant horns on it. Whatever it is that you need to do to give you that kind of shining excitement in your life so that we can fight that pain head and then lessen the pains in our body. That's my little sign off. I think that's going to be the...
That's a lovely sign.
Was it an okay sign off?
It was a great sign off.
Oh, I really have to fix my shoulder. Want to hear? There we go. I hope you heard that. It's been sliding out the whole time. Yeah, you heard that. So everybody, thank you for listening. Thank you for joining me on this one. So I think we've come to the end of our Pirate Radio broadcast for today. Thank you everybody for listening. And please keep keeping it cool in the King Kogi Village. I love this community. You guys are absolutely fantastic. And remember as well, if you're looking for something that is pain-free and you're traveling, definitely check out the sponsor of this video, Saley. And I know, look at how easy this is, right? I didn't do anything weird about it. I'm just saying it. There's a QR code on the screen, but I'm not doing anything crazy because I can do normal commercials, right? I can do a commercial that's totally normal like every other YouTuber. I can do it. I can't do it.